Tarun Thakral, Executive Director at CJ International Hotels Ltd, New Delhi, started his hospitality career in 1986 after earning a diploma in hotel management from Madras and an MBA from Institut de Hotelier Management International, Paris. In 1996, he founded Heritage Transportation Trust to preserve India's transportation heritage. As founder and managing trustee, he established the Heritage Transport Museum, which opened in December 2013. The museum has won numerous awards, including the National Tourism Award and TripAdvisor's Traveler's Choice Award, for its innovative contributions to tourism.
We thank you for all the love and support that you've shown us in these past episodes. Continue to do so. Hit the bell icon. Subscribe for our further updates. Transportation has been the biggest invention and a boon to the human civilization. Why I mention transportation today is because we are here to welcome a very eminent personality, a collector and the founder of the Heritage Transportation Museum here in Gurugram. He's with us right now at the sets of Chaibrary, and we will take you through his journey, his contribution and his passionate collection. So we welcome you, Tarunji, on the sets of Chaibrary, and thank you so much for having taken out the time today and with all the challenges we have faced till now. But thank you so much, and we are very grateful to you to be here.
It's my pleasure to be here.
The lovely and the exciting work that you've done, it is commendable.
Thank you.
I'm sure that, very few passionate people would actually bring out something like this. You as a founder of the Heritage Transport Museum, which I think nobody would have thought about in this, times to come. We've heard about museums, we've visited museums while we were in school as recreation practices. But, to come up with this idea, how did this happen to you?
All right, it's a long story, but I'll try and concise it. I was in Paris doing my master's in hospitality management, and I came back to the country in 1993. Once I came back, on one of my trips to Rajasthan, I got attracted to old gramophone players, old radios, old oil lamps. So I was thinking to myself as to why did I get attracted to those? So apparently, my stay in Paris for 2.5 years, I realized that the French used to appreciate their heritage a lot. Whereas we Indians, we somewhere down the line, not all of us, appreciate the heritage that we have, whether it's a heritage in a gramophone player or in an old oil lamp. And in one of my subsequent trips to Rajasthan again, I found a ramshackled 1932 Chevrolet car, and it was love at first sight. I just picked it up and I got it. I spent almost a year in restoring it, and in early 95, when the car was ready, it actually felt that you've given rebirth to an object which was long gone. So that actually triggered the passion of collecting vintage automobiles. So I kept collecting for 10 odd years, and then I got a little bored because I had a collection by then of about 70 cars. So then I read an article in a foreign magazine about how individuals get old railway saloons and convert them into their residences. So I approached the Indian government, Indian Railways, and I said, I want to buy an old railway saloon. So they said, have you gone crazy? What are you going to do with it? We don't give it to individuals, we just scrap it. So I said, what logic is this that you're scrapping? Here I'm trying to preserve it. So anyway, they finally said, okay, there are 4 old coaches that are lying in Ajmer Carriage Workshop, and in case you're interested, go and have a look at it and let us know. So I went there, I found a 1930s BBCI, Bombay Baroda Central India Railway Saloon, which was built in the 1930s by Sheffield and Company, which was a British company but operating out of India. And after negotiating with them and after following it up for 1 full year, that particular railway saloon was not scrapped, and it was offered to me for a sum of 5.25 lakhs.
And your first car was for 5,000 rupees, I
For
believe.
5,000 rupees. So finally I bought it. It was another task to get the saloon to I used to have a small farm in Gurgaon, and I just parked it there, restored it. Princess Siddhi Kumari of Bikaner, she was a friend of mine. She sent artisans from Bikaner to have the coach restored. Then I got into collecting all other modes of transport, which included pre-mechanized modes of transport, carriages, palkis, because somewhere in my mind, it was that I need to collect this whole gamut of transportation.
Yeah.
How people of India have traveled.
The modes of transportation.
Various modes of transport.
Ji.
So if you look at it, how transportation has evolved world over, it's pre-mechanized modes of transport, mechanized modes with railways, and then automobiles and trams and all those.
Correct.
Kind of, and also boats. Because through the rivers, the boats used to travel as inland waterways. So finally, in 2006, I formed a trust called the Heritage Transportation Trust, and I donated my entire collection to the trust. In 2009, I was fortunate to get a grant from the Government of India, Ministry of Culture, to open India's first transport museum. And finally, in December of 2013, we were able to open India's first transport museum, the Heritage Transport Museum. So we are now we're 10 years. I think I've learned a lot about people, what their expectations are, how museums should be built in India. And I think we're one of the most successful museums in the country, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. So we congratulate you for it.
Thank you. ये हमारा पहला लम्ब्रेटा था, हमारे पास भी होता था
जी।
ये गाड़ी हमारे पास नहीं थी, पर हमारे नेबर के
While you spoke of restoration, we talk of heritage, and of course, if we are trying to preserve heritage, obviously it is must be 50 years, 60 years old, even more.
More than that, yeah.
100 years old. Like it's vintage cars, so it's definitely...
30s is the oldest car, which is almost 95 years old at the moment.
Yeah. So, buying them is one amount. But to restore them, I'm sure must have been a humongous cost that comes. And do you have specialized people who do this restoration?
There are two ways it works. One is we give it to Indian mechanics, and then there is jugaad system. So ये नहीं चल रहा है तो ये बदल दीजिए, इसका ये लगा देते हैं. What I did was I used to travel a lot to the US. So through eBay and through some other sites, I was able to reach out to smaller dealers and distributors which had old parts. See, US, most of my cars are American. So there was a huge market already existing, and it's a very developed industry in vintage and classic cars. So it was easier to procure parts. So I used to fill my suitcases with small parts.
I see.
And then bring it back. Bodywork, you can do it very well out here at half the cost of what happens in the US. Chrome work you can get done. Engine work, we have good people, and the parts for the engines are available outside. So it's not that difficult. Yes, it does cost money, but if you spread your restorations over a period of time, then automatically it becomes an easy job. And there is no point in acquiring a piece of a vehicle which is not functional and just leave it there. It will further get bad.
Yeah.
So I guess, everything has a price.
Correct.
But passion has no price.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's priceless.
Yeah.
And I was reading that all the cars that you have there are in a working condition.
That's right.
So, is there a schedule that you follow for maintaining those? Do you have a team who does this?
Okay.
But single-handedly doing it, is it?
No, it's not single-handedly. Acquisitions were all single-handedly.
Ji.
Because at that stage, I think we all are, all we collectors are a little crazy somewhere. You know, I'm being very honest. So if we fall in love with one particular kind of art or cars or heritage, we actually try and stretch ourselves in acquiring them.
Acquiring it.
But because of work schedules, we are unable to pay that kind of devotion in doing it up. See, I'm not mechanically qualified to restore. But in India, I hired 4-5 people, one for the body work, one for the engine work, one for the paint job, and one for basically looking after them. So that's how the cars came back to life. Some of them did take 2 to 3 years, some in less than 6 months, depending on the condition that it was acquired in. And if I analyze the costs or the pricing or anything, I think today when you see the cars being appreciated, right from school children to a grandfather, okay, I think money doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have given people an outlet to come learn about the history of transportation and yet get inspired. You know, as a museum, if we don't know what these children are going to become tomorrow, you know, these youngsters, some could be a NASA scientist, some could be walking on on Mars tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah.
So if
Buying homes there.
yeah, if we as museum educators or creators can inspire these young children, you know, then there is no limit to their imagination.
Correct. Yeah, and how they can absorb it and take it forward. We never know how they might.
But even if few of them can do that, I think your job is done.
But tell me, you have all genre and all age groups of people visiting the museum. Has anyone ever come and shared probably a story or probably some reminiscing his time when he probably drove?
Many of them.
Okay.
ये हमारा पहला लम्ब्रेटा था, हमारे पास भी होता था। ये गाड़ी हमारे पास नहीं थी पर हमारे नेबर के पास थी और हम उसको देखते रहते थे कि हम भी कभी वो गाड़ी ले पाएंगे। Then there was this gentleman, elderly gentleman. He said, I used to have a Morris, in the late 50s, and we used to go to Shimla in that car.
I see.
और जाते जाते वो इंजन गर्म हो जाता था, हमको गाड़ी बंद करनी पड़ती थी, उसमें पानी डालना पड़ता। You know, that whole reminiscence of what they used to happen in that time. There are so many stories, which you get to hear from visitors, and that's very exciting because see, that's how they are able to connect with the museum, and that has been one of the successes. It's very easy to connect with a mode of transport. See, transportation, whether you like it or not, is very aspirational also. Today you have a Maruti, tomorrow you want a Honda, tomorrow you want a Jaguar, tomorrow you want a Rolls. It's all in our mind. It's all aspirational. Like many other things in life, transportation is a very big aspirational tool. When people relate these stories, number one, they get connected with the museum, which is very good. And secondly, they go and tell these stories when they go back home. So what happens is, as a result, more and more people, and that's how our visitor footfall has grown because of word of mouth. We didn't have money to advertise or market it. So, and we're very happy the way progressively the footfalls at the museum have grown.
Have increased. I was also told that these are like babies to you.
We collectors, we live in our own world also.
Ji.
I always like to inculcate to everybody whom I meet, whether young or old, you need to, develop a hobby.
Ji.
Because in today's world, we are all stressed out, okay, because of the way things are or the way, we ourselves feel. You get stressed out with traffic. You get stressed out if you don't have a good house. You get stressed out if, somebody, on the streets misbehave or shouts. So we have our own stress levels depending on individuals. So we feel that everybody should develop a hobby that takes out a lot of your stress. And mentally you become a lot more positive.
Correct.
I'll tell you a small story. Imagine yourself or myself, when we are young, maybe in class 2, 3, 4, we start collecting stamps. We start collecting coins. We start collecting labels. These are small hobbies which we inculcate in the school. By the time you reach class 9th and 10th, the pressure from your parents is so much. पढ़ाई करो, board आ रहा है, what will you do? Numbers नहीं आएंगे, आगे क्या होएगा तुम्हारा? So वो हमारी हॉबी रह जाती है और एक दिन वो कबाड़ी में वो फेंक जाती है. Class 12th, until class 12th, it's again, you don't study well, because in India there's so much of competition, you won't get admission in college. Okay, fine, you finished your 12th, you've got admission in a college. Okay, you have to do well in college, you need to get a good job. Okay, so that time for pursuing a hobby is never there. And even after college, अच्छा नौकरी करो, नौकरी ढूंढो, अभी नहीं अच्छी नहीं मिली है, अच्छा दूसरी नौकरी ढूंढो. Once you find that job, then अच्छा अब शादी कर लो. You know, so that whole cycle, the life cycle of a person since you're born.
It's already defined by our peers, actually.
It's defined and you don't get time to pursue. So I tell everybody.
You belong to Delhi only? Do you?
Yes.
You're born and brought up in Delhi and studied here?
I was born in Delhi, but I did my schooling from Bombay.
Okay.
I did my hotel management from Madras.
Yeah.
And then I came in 1986 to Delhi to start my job here.
Yeah. So the other side of you is an active hotelier who is also who's very active and working.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the management and the people I've met in your office are very happy. And it's like a heritage that you've built there and you've been with them for the longest time. So how do you balance your time between the hotel, which is like a professional this thing to you, and this as a passion?
You know, I've been with the company, with the hotel for a number of years now, and I've actually started my career there.
Ji.
So, number one, my first focus has been the hotel. Hobby was secondary. I always used to make sure that my office work is done and there are no issues there. And then in my evening hours, I used to work on my hobbies and collection.
Ji.
When the kids came along, I had to divide my time with the kids and the hobbies and the work. But it's not difficult. Nothing is difficult.
Yeah,
I don't like to go to movies. I don't like to go, So we all have likes. We all like to do. I do go
But
out.
I've caught you at art exhibitions.
Yeah, exhibition is one thing.
I've seen you being actively part of.
That's because I'm also developing another collection now, which probably it's a little premature to talk about it. But there's something else I'm planning to do. I just like to keep myself busy, and I think that's what has been my success, that I've kept myself busy. I sleep 6 hours, and that's about it. I enjoy. Morning I wake up, I start around what is available where, and how do you collect it, or how do you promote the museum, or how do you see the hotel coming up in the next 5 years.
So you basically live it. You live the Heritage Transport Museum in you.
Yes,
so,
certainly.
Another thing that really entices me and probably excites me is also the memorabilia collection that we saw once, which is part of your collection, and it was also exhibited. Did that happen first, or the vintage cars? So it was vintage cars first, and then
the memorabilia.
Then this thing happened. So.
One was when I was working towards creating this museum. Many people actually were trying to tell me that in India, no private individual makes museum. 10 years back, there were hardly private museums. There are very few. So I thought to myself, I said, why museums in India are only the domain of the government of India or state governments? Why? And probably one of the reasons for, the culture of going to museums had died down in our country. Because Indian museums were a little boring. They had not changed with the times. Yeah. Today they are making an effort, they are doing that. But at that time, they had not changed. So in order to make a successful museum, I visited many transport museums all over the world. I saw them, saw their positives, saw their negatives. And then when the architect, my curator and myself, we sat and thought, let's create something which is a fun place. Yeah. Because India doesn't have fun museums. We have boring museums. So let's create something which appeals to all age groups. which is something where people can spend hours together. And there's no heavy duty history. There is no heavy duty lecturing there. We have audio guides, we have the works. So all that, whosoever wants to go into the depth, there are options available. But it's not forcing, that ye padhna hi padega. That is not, that's not our
It's
thing.
like you go to National Museum
Yeah.
and you see the Harappan Valley collection. So you have to come back and write
Yeah,
an essay
right.
on what you saw, the terracotta was what, and how they stored
No,
there.
a lot of schools have approached us also. We're full of schools. In fact, 55% of our business is school children.
Students, yeah.
They have, in class 4, I think, they have a transportation, a topic on transportation.
I see.
So that also fits in very well. And plus, we get all age groups. We get kindergarten kids to class 12 kids. So,
Wonderful.
plus we also
But
get
they're lucky. At our times, हमने तो नहीं देखा. I remember me seeing my first vintage car was with Mr. Sudhir Kasliwal.
Yes, he has a
in
huge
Jaipur.
yeah.
And he happens to be a photographer also.
Right.
And of course, he runs this huge gem palace
That's
there.
right.
So when I started my career as a picture researcher, we used to stock some pictures of his. So when I happened to meet him in person, so he had these 3-4 vintage cars there, and you know how with what pride they open out and they.
He's an
show
very enthusiastic person.
Yeah.
Very,
And
very,
a wonderful gentleman too.
He
you
is.
know. And I can see the same passion with you and him, because I've sat down, he pulled out gems and showed it to us, and said, "Yeah, Queen Elizabeth had taken, we sold it to Lady Diana and whatever."
Okay.
So again, it's like, I asked him, I said, he says, "No, my father was a gemologist. He used to be running this shop and I took it over from him. But I am thorough, a photographer, and of course I like to collect my vintage cars." So that's how I did. And I think I also remember my meeting with you first was when you were sourcing some paintings
That's
of
right.
this thing. That time I was running a gallery
That's right.
of my own.
I remember
and that's how we started the
That's right.
association. But a pleasant association, and we are here today talking about this whole dream of yours. How do you want it to be just only India centric or Delhi centric? Do you want to probably take this to some other states also? Are you working in the long run? Anything like that on your mind?
Okay, the museum is India centric. It's not Delhi centric.
Okay.
We have vehicles, we have modes of transport from all over India. So that's there. We were in talks with a couple of individuals who wanted to create similar museums. And I do hope they materialize at some stage. But in the meanwhile, last year, we were approached by the Government of India, Ministry of Culture again, to curate an exhibition during G20
I see.
at Khajuraho. So we are actively getting involved, the trust is actively getting involved in curating exhibitions for the Government of India, which we did successfully. And we are on their panel for future exhibitions also.
Okay.
So it's got nothing to do with transport. Those were ASI objects which were repatriated back to our country through the Prime Minister's efforts and the PMO's efforts in terms of if they were smuggled out of India, so that objects came there and those objects were displayed.
So you do see that without the help of the government and their intervention, holistically, we do need them. We do need or do they need our
It's
advice?
vice versa. It's both ways. You scratch my back, I scratch your back, and not in a bad sense. Government also needs private entrepreneurs, private individuals to help them to take, at the end of the day, what is the objective? You're spending thousands and thousands of crores on maintaining these museums. Unless until you make them alive to today's generation, they will die down. You'll just be spending money on maintaining them and paying salaries. There'll be no point. Culture has to be alive. How do you bring it alive? You have probably the best locations, in all the cities, but you have so many restrictions. I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. You look at look at international museums. Why are they successful? Because if I want to host a corporate event at a museum, I'm allowed to do that. I pay and I can give my guests a unique setting.
Correct.
Which is what we do at the Heritage Transport Museum. But unfortunately, Indian museums don't do that. But the good part is that there are many private initiatives that have happened during the course of the last 10 years.
Correct.
And many museums are coming up. Many of them have opened. Many of them are in the process of opening. So we shall see a change in people's attitude towards museums, people's approach towards, visiting museums.
Visiting them. Yeah, that's where it lies. It's more about the visiting, because then sustenance and, you support the cause and the functionalities.
That's right. And at the end of the day, we are also an educational institution in some form. How we impart education, it's going to be the trick. If you make it fun, people will come, everybody will come. But if you make it very structured and, then nobody's going to be interested.
You can't do it with a curriculum. But
can't.
it's like you create the awareness and then the joy of sharing and educating comes in simultaneously. And in any case, I think what children or what as adults also we see, we tend to grasp and absorb more and understand more than read and hear now. So I think that remains as a visual recognition always remains as a image in your mind always. So
very true.
Anything particularly that you're doing or you would like to share from this platform to parents and to the general public as such, to say how should they look at museums? Why is it important?
Museums are a big source of history and education. People often come to the museum and ask me, why did you build it here? Why not in the heart of Delhi, or why not in the heart of Gurgaon? So I keep telling them the land costs are prohibitive, to build a museum of this scale in the central. I mean, the government doesn't support. They do give you money to construct the building, but not for acquisition of the land and the permissions required. Okay, that's one part of it. Secondly, it's the mindset that we Indians have, that museums are boring. Okay? And more often than not, when people come and they say, we never expected a thing like this, because for us it's such a sea change. This museum could be anywhere in the world. The way it's done up and it's open, it's not congested. See, typically what has happened with museums also is very few museums were built for a museum space. Okay? Most of the times what happened in India, especially with the government museums, they got a building and they say it's called museum bana dete hain. So there were restrictions in terms of how the displays could happen, height restrictions, space restrictions.
We couldn't break the space or do any fabrication.
So those were issues, and that's why they could never come up to that level of an exciting space.
Correct. Or even to the standards of a museum standard, because it demands some kind of a yardstick to meet, or the specialization.
And when you create a museum, knowing these are the kind of objects you're going to be displaying, you have a rail saloon somewhere, you have a boat somewhere, you have huge number of, how do you display it, and how do you make sure that it appears that every object is talking to each other, even if there are different levels.
Correct.
So it makes it more exciting. So in today's generation, today's world, people are looking for beautiful spaces to visit, clean places to visit, places which have proper bathrooms. Our Indian
Very
museum,
basic,
some basics, if you go wrong there, that mindset is, and a good cafe.
I believe you have a restaurant.
We have a cafe within the museum. So not only these things need to be catered, if you're building a museum, how do you sustain it in the long run? Because ticket revenues cannot, complete, museums are an expensive proposition. So when we built the museum, we built in various revenue generating spaces within the museum. We have a conference room which we let out. We have lawns which we let out depending on the weather conditions. So there's a restaurant,
I believe some movie shootings and all that.
Video
locations are lent out as.
So that's done on a Monday when the museum is shut to the public. So So we make sure that,
So when you did the planning, was this simultaneously happening? That you did have, how do I sustain my museum?
that was
so
the
the revenue generation had to be, also a very important part.
That's right.
As an important fabrication or hanging, or how you would do the
Absolutely.
roofs or the internal systems.
That's-
What about security systems? In
we
museums?
have full CCTVs everywhere. We have security guards within the premises and at the entrances, X-rays and everything. So all that is there. It's funny because when people were saying that, why are you doing it? You'll go put your money, all will go, in 10 years it'll be down the drain and all that. I said, let's give it a try. In a worst case situation, objects are still there. I mean, nobody's taking away the vintage cars that I've bought, or nobody's taking away that. I'll have to close it down if I don't succeed. And that's when the idea came that let me look at it as a business. Not to make money, because it's a not-for-profit trust which is running the museum, so I'm not making anything. But how does one make sure that money from my pocket doesn't keep on going every year? So that's how we had thought about this at that time, that these are the things. And when you see museums abroad, your eyes are open that, okay, ye bhi karna chahiye, ye bhi karna chahiye. This is another source. Souvenir shop is another source.
Yeah, I was going to ask what kind of souvenirs you sell from your museum.
Automotive related, but things which people love. So there's a huge turnover. And it's not very expensive. They're ranging from 200 rupees upwards to about 1,000 rupees.
Yeah, because everybody would like to carry something as a
so they
memory to the visit.
Where we've been also very, very successful has been the foreign tourists that travel between Delhi to Jaipur.
I see.
So we are on the brochure series of quite a few tour operators, or tour operating companies. And they stop by for lunch and museum visit. So that also gives us a steady stream of visitors as well as this. And these people have actually, we've actually been very proud that everybody has talked about us a lot. So you get visitors from...
Because they are the ones who write reviews. And do you charge them like the way they charge
it's the same.
in Agra? They charge the international visitors something in dollars. And
flat rate for Indians and foreigners alike. No change.
I see. That's something good. And I think...
and I personally never like that distinction. If I go to UK, it's not that, the local residents have a separate rate and the foreigners have it's the same rate everywhere. These are basics.
What else has been very, very close to you that you would like to share? Any incident that happened while you were into this collection?
We were wanting a tram from Calcutta. And they were in their last legs. So there was only one remaining, a wood-bodied tram, the last of the wood-bodied tram built in the 1940s. And that was also put for scrap. So I wrote to the managing director of Calcutta Tramways, please don't scrap it. I'll come there, I want to buy this for the museum. So he was a smart gentleman. He invited me over. I went and visited. He says, I hope you're not making a restaurant into it. Typically people take it and make a restaurant or a cafe or something. Correct. So I said, no, this is going to be preserved to its original self and displayed so that people can sit there. So what we've done is, the tram is there at the museum, fully authenticated restoration. We put 2 televisions in both the cabs. It consists of 2 cabs. One where we are showing old footage of trams.
How they would run on
the roads, whether it was Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, the old ones. And the other side, there was a gentleman who had filmed. He was standing on the ledge of the tram while the tram was moving a few years back in Calcutta and filming. So there's hours and hours of footage. So you can hear what's going on in the streets, the sounds of the streets, the sound of the people while the sound of the tram itself, the bell. So when you sit there, you actually feel the tram is moving. So these are interesting things that I still remember one. I'd gone years back to collect a car from a city called Lakshmangarh in Rajasthan. So we couldn't, I have offered him at that time 15,000 rupees. He said no, 25,000. I came back a little disappointed that I couldn't get that car. So I called him, okay, मैं 20,000 कर दूंगा उसका. So he said, ठीक है, 20,000 में done हो गया. आप कब आओगे? So I said, another week, 10 days. But before I could reach there was a massive storm. And one old Haveli actually fell on the car and the car was completely crushed and gone. So we lost a car.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
things like this.
there are so many interesting stories.
Yeah.
But I remember bidding for the aircraft that we have.
Yeah.
There's a Piper aircraft at Lucknow Airport. And the bid conditions were that your bid has to be put in 2 envelopes. Okay. First the bid and then another envelope. And there was another gentleman who was there whose bid was marginally higher than me, but he did not put it in 2 envelopes. So his was cancelled and I got the bid.
So that was luck.
Yeah, that was sheer luck.
That
sheer
was luck. So
yeah.
Sometimes the universe also, they say,
They help.
works towards it. And you were talking about this preservation and the money that was being spent. I suddenly remembered when my son was very young, and there used to be one Harley Davidson's showroom in Vasant Vihar. And each time we would go there to the Priya complex,
Yeah.
he would just go there and stand. And my husband is a lover of bullets,
Okay.
So, I mean, that's what probably I married him for also. So, वहाँ जाके वो खड़ा होके बोलता था, Mama, we have so much of waste things in the house. Sell that. इसको बेच दो. इसको घर लेके जाते हैं. So then he was a small toddler, I think hardly 4 years or 5 years old. But like you were saying, visitors, children, their observations are so strong.
That's right.
I realized this child of mine would recognize cars by the headlights and the tail lights. He would say,
They're
Mama,
very
ye
smart.
car hai.
Very
Ye
smart.
car hai. So, it's so right. I mean, I'm probably your
it's
vintage
amazing.
cars might get
It's
recognized
amazing.
by-
It's amazing how these youngsters, they all, we have a tough time sometimes telling them you can't sit in the cars.
Yeah.
Because, otherwise we won't save them if we allow people sitting in the cars. But, also as museums, you need to educate the preservation of heritage.
Ji.
Cars is one thing, not everybody is interested. It's not easy to acquire them. But you could use any other form which interests you to, preserve it. It's as much as the government's role as it is our role to preserve the heritage of this country.
Correct.
Otherwise, we'll be left with nothing, in years to come.
Yeah, they'll all be buried and gone.
Gone, yeah. No recollection of ye bhi hota tha, ya ye aise hua karta tha. There's a lot of learning, if you look at it.
Do you write, Tarunji? Are you documenting this anywhere?
I mean, my collection is documented. My own stories are not. Maybe one day,
Yeah.
I mean,
So we should be able to read them as autobiographies
or maybe just a
small-
narration or something.
Yeah. Because again, the whole reason and the existence of Chaibrary has happened because of this only.
That's right.
And we are documenting you today, and much more than that. If you do write and put them down, I'm sure it would reach generations probably when we are dead and gone or whatever.
Yeah, but that's what the reason. It's exactly that sentence. We will be dead and gone, but at least these things will remain for times to come, for other people to appreciate that ये ऐसा भी होता था.
मेमोरेबिलियाज के बारे में कुछ बताइए जो आप फेसबुक पे पोस्ट करते रहते हैं once in a while and
अभी जो अब मैं कलेक्शन कर रहा हूँ.
जी हाँ, जो आप अभी कलेक्शन कर रहे हैं.
During COVID, I had a lot of time on my hands, and this is another trigger. I don't know what all I'm going to collect in life, but this was another trigger of collecting old bazaar art. That includes old posters.
Why do you call it a bazaar art?
Because they were in bazaar on streets.
I see.
So, I mean, it's just a nomenclature. We can call it visual arts also. But
no, I just wanted to know why you coined it bazaar art.
Most of these things were in the bazaar of our a country.
Streets and
Streets,
states
signs,
and
yeah.
cities. Yeah.
So they were all posters, advertising posters. If they were advertising, say, a Sunlight soap, which were recently introduced by Lever Brothers of the UK into India, how would they advertise that? How would they catch the attention of Indians?
Indian market.
Who never knew or never heard about Sunlight soap. They were okay with their local brand, Kamala soap and, Lakshmi soap, but they were not Sunlight. So they used Ravi Verma's oleographs and used them as the backdrop and put the motifs
The products and the this thing.
and that's how they started selling. And people got an assurance that, okay, ये तो हमारा ही भगवान है.
So they could relate with the
and then
using
gave
of
them the confidence. And it's not only just one item, hundreds of items across board, from food to hygiene products to beverages, everything had gods in it. And that was one phase of our country, where gods were being used
to promote products.
To promote products. Today you can't even think of that.
Yeah,
so that's a part of our history. You can't shun away with it. That's a part of our history. In fact, so that's one, posters is one part of it. Calendars. Today we don't see calendars anywhere. Okay?
Cost cutting.
Yeah, cost cutting and all that. Earlier in everybody's houses, there used to be one or two calendars which they could see the date. Abhi mobile pe date nazar aa jati hai aapko. So they were all there. Now they also have a beautiful history. How companies were advertising through calendars, because the calendar used to stay for one full year in your house.
Correct.
So उसका product जो है वो 12 महीने के लिए आपके सामने आपकी आंखों में आता रहता है.
And that's like you wake up every morning to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there was a God's picture on that, that would never, and people would not throw it even after that year would have gone.
Yeah.
Because of that,
Some would probably frame it. I've known of people who would frame calendar images and keep.
So today, if we are able to acquire it, it's those where people had preserved them, and we still are in a position to acquire that. Now, broadly, it's this, but there are oleographs also. Raja Ravi Verma, Dhurandhar, Mali. There were quite a few renowned artists of those times. See, when you start collecting in bulk, you can't look at buying a painting of Raja Ravi Verma. It's unaffordable, So the next best option, and that's what the idea was even at his time, that, let my art reach people through this oleograph, chromolithograph or oleograph techniques. And that's how they were printed in large numbers.
Correct.
But today, because in India, what I've seen, or we all know, paper doesn't last very long. Weather conditions don't suit paper, humidity, dryness, all kinds of issues, and the paper starts withering out very soon. I was lucky that I have been able to build a collection. It's almost crossed 5,000 at the moment. And we're hoping to formally, in some form or the other, either an online museum of popular bazaar art, which you don't like, and a real exhibition traveling to various parts of the country, so that people are, are educated, or people develop some kind of an interest in what used to happen.
Yeah, with technologies of virtual things, that you can possibly give a walkthrough to the whole museum,
That's
people
right.
who can't visit you physically.
That's right. So that's, I'm pretty excited about that. I'm enjoying it.
Okay.
And I still, once a month at least, I take my car and I'm off to smaller towns and villages trying to hunt for stuff.
Oh, so you are still the treasure man, still looking for treasures on the streets.
I'm a hardcore collector, as they say.
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of people must be hearing this today, and the audiences tomorrow, don't be surprised if people come with trunks.
No.
This thing to say, Tarunji, here we are,
I'd love that. I'd love that.
Heritage and
I'd love that. But I just need to structure it a little bit, so that, as collectors, sometimes we make this mistake. We get into a thing and we know that, okay, it's going to do well. Or, today I'm collecting it, maybe tomorrow, I try and promote it in some form or the other. In the US, which is a developed collector market, you have collectors for everything, okay? And that's where all the other countries have collectors today. India has few collectors, maybe on a scale, if you compare with our population, it could be 0.01%. Okay, whereas all the developed countries, especially the US, UK, France, Spain, Italy, even Poland, they have huge amount of collectors. Germany, and that's why the market values keep increasing. Okay, so even if I don't look at it from the value point of view, okay, if I look at it, okay, I have this collection which nobody else has, it just gives me that sense of satisfaction that मैंने कुछ ऐसा इकट्ठा कर लिया है जो किसी और के पास
नहीं है.
So that gives
So
you,
that's value and that's worth for
Yeah.
you. That is worth in itself.
Yeah.
So Tarunji, it was lovely having you over the show.
Thank you.
And this is so much of information that goes out now from not just the Heritage Transport Museum, but to the memorabilia and to the other collections that you've had. Any new acquisitions, recent acquisitions that you want to share?
I just got these two posters from the US, and they're both advertising Manipuri dancers. Okay, so and they have similar pictures of a Manipuri dancer in a full costume, but under one name says India,
Okay.
and the other one says Pakistan.
Acha.
Okay, so one had to do a
And
research.
this is Manipur.
Manipur.
Okay.
Manipur dancing. So then I was figuring out as to Manipur is in India.
Correct.
How is Pakistan? Because this had to be after partition, so early 50s.
Yeah.
So then I went and I researched, and I realized that almost about 100,000 Manipuris stayed back in East Pakistan, which was bordering the Manipur that is there in India.
Okay.
So East Pakistan, but they were not even called East or West. They were just called Pakistan,
Okay.
which now is Bangladesh.
Okay.
Okay. They were also promoting, from a tourism point of view, Manipur dances. So that's why you have two posters. Now just imagine, you have two posters side by side, one India and one Pakistan. There's some history somewhere.
I know. I mean, honestly, I didn't know about it, and today I go back with this.
Yeah.
We had heard about Bangladesh and how Bengal got broken, and people.
But it was
moved
called
from-
Pakistan earlier. Then later it turned to East Pakistan, East and West, for their own differentiation. And then Bangladesh happened later on. But then those Manipuris probably are still there in Bangladesh.
So my last question to you is, what do you think about Chaibrary, and what is your take on this platform that?
I think it's amazing. I mean, I think you guys are doing a remarkable job. Thanks to you and your team. It's very important for some of us to share our ideas so that more and more people can get involved. And as a platform, I think, you guys are doing a remarkable effort in promoting, various forms of art. That's because sometimes people get limited to just one form of art. Whereas this, I've seen this is like a much broader platform. And I think you're doing a wonderful job yourself.
Thank you so much.
It's a brilliant idea, and I
Yeah.
think hats off to who thought about this and is promoting it. And I'm sure that in the long run, this will become a treasure for many people to watch it over and over again.
And with you on it.
Yeah.
So thank you once
Thank you.
again. Here we end this episode on Chaibrary. A wonderful, interesting conversation of ideas and preservation of our heritage. Okay, my appeal to the Chaibrary audiences is thanks for all the support, thanks for all the likes, and do continue to subscribe to us. Do hit the bell icon for regular updates from us, and keep waiting for a week for the next episode on Chaibrary. This is Kiran Mohan signing off from the sets of Chaibrary. Thank you.